In this tutorial, we're going to be looking at the 4 stages to the best core training program. Now, you can find these core stages, or you can follow these stages, which is what I'm about to talk about, in my 12-week online core training program, which you can find in the link below. But these 4 stages are what make up the program. It's how it's been designed, and it's going to help you get the most from the program and get the most from your core so it performs at its best. And those 4 stages are, first of all, movement, so fundamental movements and core skills. Stage 2 is increase endurance. Stage 3 is to tune that endurance and tune the muscles to stabilize the core. And then finally, developing speed and power and strength on top of that. Stage 1, in any core training program that's going to be effective, we have to work on fundamental movements and core skills. Now, in the 12-week program, they're all done in workshops. So you start working on them, but it doesn't mean you have to work on them in stage 1 and then you stop when you get to stage 2. It's a continual process, but we need to develop that to be able to, in a sense, move on to the next stage or get more from the next stage. So what does it mean? Well, I talked about 8 fundamental movements. So we're talking about lifting, carrying, pushing, pulling, walking, running, getting up, and rotating. So we need to refine those movements because that's going to build the patterns in the brain, build the programs in the brain or the playlist in the brain around those movements. Because when we get into a more effective mechanical position, that means the core is going to be working that much more effectively. So it works twofold. If we get into the right position with the movements that we're doing, the core works better. If we can then train that when we get on to stages 2, 3 and 4, again, the core is going to get better. So it's a self-fulfilling cycle that keeps, or a virtuous cycle that keeps improving your core. So we develop the movement. That gets good quality good and effective core working. So lifting, carrying, pushing, pulling, walking, running, getting up, rotating. Those are the ones we need to focus on. We also need to focus on the core skills. Now, the core skills is what we apply within the movements and within the exercises in stages 2, 3 and 4. And the core skills is breathing and then bracing. So we need to be able to breathe and we need to be able to brace and breathe at the same time. So we need to get those two sort of in sync, as it were. Then we come on to joint mobility and stability. So how mobile are your joints and improving that with stretching. And then how stable are the joints? Again, using certain exercises to understand the balance and stability that joints have. And then we move on to joint awareness, which is then how well our joints can move, but also being conscious of that. So knowing where they are, knowing that we're in good posture without having to look in, say, a mirror to be able to do so. We can just feel it. So when we move, we know we're there because we can feel that we're there. So we've got breathing, bracing, joint mobility, joint stability, joint awareness. What that then moves on to is the, in a sense, the final one, which is hip hinge. So again, they all sync up together because when we go into a hip hinge, which is hinging at the hip, we need to understand our joint awareness. We need to know what our lower back's doing. We need to know what our hips are doing. We need to know what our knees are doing, our head and our upper back. So we need to know all of those things. We also need to know what joint mobility and stability, or what joint mobility we have. So how far down can we go before we break at the back? So how much mobility do our hips have, essentially? So we need to be able to do this, which is what the workshops are for. We need to start building this, so when we then go into the program, it gets honed, it gets improved, it becomes more effective. Stage 2 is increasing endurance. Now, this is endurance of the core and its muscles. So we've started improving the movement just every day. We're starting working on the core skills, getting the breathing and the bracing right, because they're going to be the two most applicable ones when it comes to this next stage. So if I just use a plank, for example, if we're building endurance, it's the ability of our body to hold a posture without fatigue. So obviously when we're using a plank, the traditional way is to just hold 30 seconds, 40 seconds, 50 seconds, 60 seconds, so on and so forth. We build up the endurance that way. But what I do in the program is something slightly different, and I build it in blocks. So we're able to put more endurance in without the build-up of fatigue. So what we're doing is we're coming into a plank, we're holding, and then every 10 seconds we just drop our knees for 5. Gives our body a chance to relax, rest, and release some of the waste product build-up. Then we come back up and we hold. Again, we're breathing. So again, we're not forgetting the core skills, the breathing that we need to be doing in the plank and the bracing that we need to be doing in the plank. So we're putting all of that together during the workout programs. What we're also doing is we're not only just doing that in the plank, which is going to do sort of the anterior musculature, we're going into other exercises. So we move around the side, we move around the back, we get certain joints moving. So we're starting to apply what we learnt in stage 1, which is building of movement and the core skills. We're applying that when we go into stage 2. We don't stop and forget what we've done. We move on and we build on top of it. So we're still using what we learnt here and bringing it across into stage 2. So we build endurance. We build it in those blocks so we get much more effective endurance because we allow the body to release some of the waste product build-up and then hold again. Release the build-up and hold again. So I'm building in 10-second blocks all the way through, building this endurance so we can then move on to the stage 3, which is then tuning the core. And I'll show you some exercise examples from the workouts in the next part. Stage 3 is all about tuning the core so it's able to stabilize the hips and the lower spine. So I'll show you 3 exercises that I use. So we build up the endurance first in the program, and then we move on and start introducing exercises that start to tune the core and stabilize hips more and stabilize the lower spine more. So I'll show you a plank, a side plank, and a bridge. So that is effectively going front, side, and back. So what we're trying to do now with tuning the core is bringing an element of stability in. Now what stability is the timing of muscle contraction. Now if we go into a plank and our hips are wobbling all over the place, that's unstable because the muscles aren't stabilizing the area and it's unstable, it's moving. So what we need to be able to do is stabilize that, and that's what tunes the core and the muscles to work more effectively. So what happens, and again, there's workshops for all of these exercises in the program. So I go through all of the teaching points, common mistakes, how to correct those mistakes, and how to make it easier and how to make it harder. So when you go into the program, it's much easier for you to in some respects, add some progressions in of your own because you've built that knowledge up, and if you're aware of it, you can then go for and therefore go and do it. So what tuning the core looks like, or what an untuned core looks like, if I come down into a plank like that, and then I lift my arm and my hips move. That's unstable through the hip and through the spine. So what we need to do is tune that and stabilize it. And what that basically means is we come into the same position, so the same plank position, but what we want to do when we lift the arm, we lift up slowly and we keep the hips nice and level, which means my leg has got to do a little bit of extra work and also my torso. And what happens as I change sides from left arm to right arm, it moves from one side to the other side. So what we're doing is we're tuning and stabilizing the area. So we do that in the plank. With regards to the side plank, we come up in this position, we lift a foot. Again, unstable, it would drop or you wouldn't be able to hold the position. But what we do, and come up. So we maintain proper position of the pelvis. So we know glute medius, glute minimus, and the obliques and the QL are working more effectively. And then finally, we do the same in the bridge. So we come into this position, we lift, and then up it comes, up it comes. Again, if it was unstable, it would drop. But what we're trying to do is get stable, so we're using everything that we've learned in all the core skills in building of endurance and during the plank and the side plank, we're taking all of those key points and adding it into tuning the core to stabilise the pelvis and to stabilise the spine. Stage number 4 is then developing speed, strength and power. Now this applies and brings in some movement, but because we've been learning that in stage 1, we can then start building it ready for stage 4. Now this is something that the program doesn't go into because it requires certain weights and not everybody's got weights. The whole program is a body weight program. It could be included in, but what I've decided to do is because people will be starting at more of a beginner to intermediate level, it then brings them up so they're then able to go into this type of more advanced type of training. And what it basically means, we're talking about speed, strength, power. So what we need to be able to do is take, this is only a lightweight, it's only 5 kilos, but we need to start moving it quickly. But this is going to not only build or further build endurance, it's also going to further build the tuning of the core because we're going to be moving fast. And one very simple exercise to do it is to come into this position, one side, and then effectively throw the weight over your shoulder and then pull it back down. But we're moving quickly. So it's here and then it's moving. So I'm developing the speed, strength and the power through the shoulders, but also the core is developing and that solid platform for the shoulders to be able to do it. What we can then do is a very natural progression of the exercise is to use more of the hips as well. So we come in and what you'll notice is as I'm doing this, my body wants to twist. So if we then just start adding in a little turn, we've then got a little bit more in the way of a dynamic exercise, which is going to further develop speed, strength, power. Obviously, we would do it one side, then we would do it the other. There are more exercises that you can do like that, but that's just one example. So those are the 4 stages. So all we need to start doing now is start building in that way and not going and trying to build speed, strength and power first, and then working out that we need to go, oh no, we need to tune the core, we need to increase endurance, and then finally figuring out, oh actually what I really need to do is improve the movement. Because if you're moving poorly, doing very quick movements, you're very much more susceptible to injury. So what we're trying to do is build you from the ground up rather than the top down. We're trying to build that foundation of good movement, which then develops you into endurance with the core skills, tuning the core again with the core skills, and then finally speed, strength, power, bringing back into more movement-based exercises. So hopefully that's been helpful. Hopefully it's given you a better idea of the 4 stages, and if you want to get involved in certainly the first 3 of those stages, then just click below, go through to the 12-week program and enroll, and I'll coach you through my workshops, tutorials and workouts. So many thanks for watching. My name is Chris from Chris for Whole Training. I'll speak to you in the next tutorial.